Chapter 3, Section 1. Pell, Station Master's Office, Sector Blue 1, 9952, 1100 hours. The daily toll of disasters extended even to regions beyond Station. Angelo Constantine rested his head on his hand and studied the printout in front of him. The seal blown on Centaur Mine on Pell 4's third moon. 14 men killed. 14. He could not help the thought. Skilled, cleared workers. They had humanity rotting in its own filth the other side of Q-Line, and they had to lose the likes of these instead. Lack of supply, old parts, things which should have been replaced being rigged to keep working. The quarter-credit seal gave way and 14 men died in a vacuum. He typed through a memo to locate workers among Pell techs who could replace the lost ones. Their own docks were going idle, jammed with ships on main berths and auxiliaries, but very little moving in or out. And the men were better out there in the mines where their expertise could do some good. Not all the transferred workers had necessary skills at what they were set to do. A worker had been killed on Downbelow, crushed trying to direct a crawler out of the mud where an inexperienced partner had driven it. Condolences had to be added to those Emilio had already written to the family on Station. There were 2 more murders known in Q, and a body had been found adrift in the vicinity of the docks. Supposedly, the victim had been vented alive. Q was blamed. Security was trying to get ID on the victim, but there was considerable mutilation of the body. There was a case of another kind, a lawsuit involving 2 longtime resident families sharing quarters in alter-day rotation. The original inhabitants accused the newcomers of pilferage and conversion. Damon sent him the case as an example of a growing problem. Some council action was going to have to be taken in legislation to make responsibilities clear in such cases. A docksider newly assigned to his post was in hospital, half killed by the crew of the militarized merchanter Janus. The militarized crews demanded merchanter privileges and access to bars against some stationer authorities who tried to put them under military discipline. The bones would mend. The relations between station-side officers and the merchanter crews were in worse condition. The next stationer officer who went out with the patrols was looking to get his throat cut. Merchanter families were not used to strangers aboard. No station personnel to be assigned to militia ships without permission of ship's captain. He sent to the militia office. Militia ships will patrol under their own officers pending resolution of morale difficulties. That would create anguish in some quarters. It would create less than a mutiny would. A merchanter ship against the station authority which tried to direct it. Aline had warned him. He found occasion now to take that advice, an emergency in which Station Master could override Council's ill-advised desire to keep its thumb on the armed freighters. There were petty crises in supply. He stamped authorizations where needed, some after the fact, approval on local supervisors' ingenuity, particularly in the mines. He blessed skilled subordinates who had learned to ferret hidden surpluses out of other departments. There was need for repair in Q, and security asked authorization for armed forces to seal and clear Orange 3 up to the 40s for the duration of the construction, which meant moving out barracks full of residents. It was rated urgent, but not life-threatening. Taking a repair crew in without sealing the area was. He stamped it authorized. Shutting down the plumbing in that sector instead threatened them with disease. A merchanter Captain Illico to see you, sir. He drew in his breath, stabbed at the button on the console, calling the woman in. The door opened, admitted a huge woman, grayed and seamed with years Redruve had not caught in time. Or perhaps she was in the decline. The drugs would not hold it off forever. He gestured to a chair. The captain took it gratefully. She had sent the interview request an hour ago, while the ship was coming in. She came from Swan's Eye, a can hauler out of Mariner. He knew the locals, but not this woman. She was one of their own now, militarized. The blue sleeve cord was the insignia she wore to indicate as such. What's the message? He asked. And from whom? The old woman searched her jacket and extracted an envelope, leaned heavily forward to lay it out on his desk. From the Olvig's hammer, she said, out of Viking. Flashed us out there and gave us this hand-to-hand. They're going to lie out of Station Scan a while, afraid, sir. They don't like what they see at all. Viking. Word of that disaster had come in long ago. And where had they been since then? Their message might make it clearer, but they claim to have taken damage clearing Viking. Short-jumped and hung out in nowhere. That's their story. And they're scarred up for sure. But they've got a load. We should have been so lucky when we ran. Then we wouldn't be running militia service, would we, sir, for dock charges? You know what's in this? I know, she said. There's something on the move. Push is coming to shove, Mr. Constantine. The way I reckon it. Hammer tried to jump Union side and didn't find it so good over there after all. Union tried to grab her, it seems, and she ran for it. She's scared of the same thing here. Wanted me to come in ahead of her and bring the message, so she won't have her hands dirty with it. Consider her position if Union figures she blew the whistle on them. Union's moving. Angelo regarded the woman, the round face and the deep, sunken dark eyes, nodded slowly. You know what happens here if your crew talks on station or elsewhere. Makes it very hard on us. Family, she said. We don't talk to outsiders. The black eyes fixed steadily on him. I'm militia, Mr. Constantine, because we had the bad luck to come in with no load, and you laid a charge on us, and because there's nowhere else. Swan's Eye isn't one of the Combine haulers, got no reserve and no credit here like some. But what's credit, Mr. Constantine, if Pell folds? From here on, never mind the credits in your bank. I want supplies in my hold. Blackmail, Captain. I'm taking my crew back out there on patrol, and we're going to watch your perimeter for you. If we see any Union ships, we'll flash you word in a hurry and jump fast. A can hauler isn't up to seek and dodge with a ridership, and I'm not going to do any heroics. I want the same advantage Pell crews have, that have food and water hoarded up off the manifests. You charge there's hoarding. Mr. Station Master, you know there's hoarding by every ship that's attached to some station-side concern, and you're not going to antagonize those Combines by investigating, are you? How many of your station-side officers get their uniforms dirty checking the holds and tanks visually, And I'm asking the same break for my family and the others got by being Combine. Supplies. Then I go back out on the line. You'll get them. He turned then and there and keyed it through on priority. Be off this station as quickly as possible. She nodded when he had done and faced her again. Fair done, Mr. Constantine. Where will you jump, Captain, if you have to? The Cold Deep. Got me a place I know out in the dark. Lots of freighters do, you know that, Mr. Constantine? Long, lean years coming if the push breaks through. Union will patronize them that were Union long before. Lie low and hope they need ships bad if it comes. New territories would stretch them thin and they'd need it. Or slink earthward. Some would. Angelo frowned. You think it's really coming? She shrugged. Feel the draft, Station Master. Wouldn't be on this station for any bribe if the line don't hold. A lot of merchanters hold your opinion. We've been ready, she said in a low voice, for 100 years. Ask Quinn, Station Master. You looking for a place, too? No, Captain. She leaned back and nodded slowly. My respects to you for it, Station Master. You can believe we won't jump without giving an alarm, and that's more than some of our class will do. I know that it's a heavy risk for you, and you've got your supplies, all you need. Anything more? She shook her head, a slight flexing of her bulk. She gathered herself to her wide-braced feet. "Wish you luck," she said, and offered her hand. "Wish you luck. All the merchanters that are here and not on the other side of the line, pick their side against the odds. Them that still meet out in the dock and get you supplies right out of Union, they don't do it all for profit. No profit here. You know that, Mr. Station Master? It would have been easier on the other side, in some ways." He shook her thick hand. "Thank you, Captain." "Huh," she said, and shrugged self-consciously, waddled out. He took the message, opened it. It was a handwritten note, a scrawl. "Back from Union side. Carriers orbiting at Viking. 4, maybe more. Rumor says Mazian's on the run. Ships lost. Egypt, France, United States, maybe others. Situation falling apart." It was not signed, had no ship's name attached. He studied the message a moment, then rose and finger-keyed the safe, put the paper in, and locked it. His stomach was unsettled. Observers could be wrong. Information could be planted. Rumors started deliberately. This ship would not come in. Hammer would observe a while, possibly come in, possibly run. Any attempt to drag them in for direct questioning would be bad politics with other merchanters. Freighters circled Pell, hoping for food, for water, consuming station supplies, using up combine credit, which they had to honor for fear of riot, old debts to vanish stations, using up station supplies rather than the precious hoards which they had conserved aboard, against the day they might have to run. Some brought in supplies, true, but more consumed them. He keyed through to the desk outside. "I'm closing up for the day," he said. "I can be reached at home. If it can't wait, I'll come back." "Yes, sir." The murmur came back. He gathered up a few of his less disturbing papers, put them in his case, put on his jacket, and walked out with a nod of courtesy to his secretary, to the several officials who had their offices in the same room, and entered the corridor outside. He had been working late the last several days, was due at least the chance to work in greater comfort, to read the caseful of documents without interruption. He had had trouble on Downbelow. Emilio had shipped it all station-side last week, with a scathing denunciation of the personnel involved and the policies they represented. Damon had urged the troublemakers shipped out to the mining posts, a quick way to fill up the needed number of workers. Counsel for the defense protested prejudice in the legal affairs office and urged clearing of the tainted service records with full reinstatement. It had flared into something bitter. John Lucas had made offers, made demands, and they finally had that settled. Presently, he had 50 files on Q residents being processed out as provisionals. He thought of stopping by the executive lounge for a drink on the way, doing some of the paperwork there, taking his mind off what still had him sweating. He had a pager in his pocket, was never without it, even with calm to rely on. He thought about it. He went home, that little distance down Blue 112, quietly opened the door.
"Angelo?"
Alicia was awake then. He shed his case and his jacket on the chair by the door. "I'm home," he said, smiled dutifully at the old downer female who came out of Alicia's room to pat his hand and welcome him. "Good day, Lily."
"Have good day,"
Lily affirmed, grinning her gentle smile. She made herself noiseless in gathering up what he had put down, and he walked back into Alicia's room, leaned down over her bed, and kissed her. Alicia smiled, still as she was always still on the immaculate linens, with Lily to tend her, to turn her, to love her with the devotion of many years. The walls were screens. About the bed the view was of stars, as if they hung in mid-space. Stars, and sometimes the sun, the docks, the corridors of Pell, or pictures of Downbelow woods, the base of the family, of all such things as gave her pleasure. Lily changed the sequences for her.
Damon came by,
Alicia murmured.
he and Aline, for breakfast. It was nice. Aline's looking well. So happy.
Often they stopped by, one or the other of them, especially with Emilio and Milico out of reach. He remembered a surprise, a tape he had dropped into his jacket pocket for fear of forgetting it. Had a message from Emilio. I'll play it for you.
Angelo, is something wrong?
He stopped in mid-breath and shook his head ruefully. You're sharp, love.
I know your face, love. Bad news.
Not for Emilio. Things are going very well down there. Much better. He reports considerable progress with the new camps. They haven't had any trouble out of Q personnel. The road is through to 2, and there's a number willing to transfer down the line.
I think I get the better side of the reports. I watch the halls. I get that too, Angelo.
He gently turned her head for her, so that she could look at him more easily. War's heating up, he said. Is that grim enough? The beautiful eyes, still beautiful in a thin, pale face, were vital and steady.
How close now?
Just merchanters getting nervous. Not at all close. There's no signs of that. But I'm concerned about morale. She moved her eyes about, a gesture at the walls.
You make all my world beautiful. Is it beautiful out there?
No harm has come to Pell. There's nothing imminent. You know I can't lie to you. He sat down on the edge of the bed, the clean, smooth sheets, took her hand. We've seen the war get hot before, and we're still here.
How bad is it?
I talked to a merchanter a few moments ago, who talked about merchanter attitudes. Spoke about places out in the deep, good for sitting and waiting. Thought comes to me, do you know, that there are other stations of a kind, more than Pell left. Chunks of rock in unlikely places, things merchanters know about. Maybe Mazian. Surely Mazian. Just places where ships know to go. So if there are storms, there are havens, aren't there? If it comes down to any bad situation, we do have some choices.
You'd leave?
He shook his head. Never. Never. But there's still a chance of talking the boys into it, isn't there? We persuaded one to Downbelow. Work on your youngest. Work on Aline. She's your best hope. She has friends out there. She knows. And she could persuade Damon. He pressed her hand. Alicia Lucas Constantine needed Pell. Needed the machinery, equipment a ship could not easily maintain. She was wedded to Pell and the machines. Any transfer of her entourage of metal and experts would be public. Doomsday headlined on vid. She had reminded him of that.
I am Pell.
She had laughed, not laughing. She had been, once, beside him. He was not leaving. In no way did he consider that. Without her, abandoning what his family had built over the years, what they had built together. It's not close, he said again. But he feared it was.